The challenge that never happened. The air was heavy in the Tokyo dojo that afternoon in 1972. The sun filtered through the paper windows, casting long shadows on the worn tatami. Bruce Lee adjusted the black belt on his gi, eyes fixed on the man in front of him, Sonny Chiba, the legendary Japanese martial arts star known as much for his films as for his Kyokushin karate skill. Chiba had extended the invitation with a courteous smile, but his eyes betrayed a spark of challenge. They say you're the fastest in the world, Lee-san. That your Jeet Kune Do is unbeatable. But words are just wind. Prove it. Bruce didn't respond right away. I knew this wasn't a simple demonstration request. It was a test. A clash of egos between two rising legends, each representing a different martial arts philosophy. Chiba, with his brute strength and devastating techniques, Lee, with his lightning speed and adaptability. The Chiba students lined up around the mat, muttering among themselves. Some looked at Bruce suspiciously, others curiously. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. He was not a man to refuse challenges, but he was not a fool either. I knew that, in that dojo, any mistake could be exploited. Chiba assumed his position, his fists clenched, his body leaning slightly forward. Bruce remained relaxed, arms hanging loosely at his sides. Come on then, he said, his tone almost casual. What happened next was so fast that few could follow it. Chiba charged forward with a guttural ki, his right fist swinging towards Bruce's face. It was a powerful blow, loaded with years of training. But before he could complete the movement, Bruce had already moved to the side, almost as if he had anticipated every detail. His left hand intercepted Chiba's arm in a smooth pack saw, diverting the trajectory of the punch, while his right, in an almost imperceptible movement, touched the Japanese's chest. It wasn't a strong blow. It was not a devastating attack. It was a touch. A reminder. Chiba froze. His eyes widened for a split second, not in pain, but in understanding. Bruce hadn't needed strength. There was no need for violence. Just a demonstration of control, of precision, of something that went beyond crude technique. The dojo was silent. Bruce took a step back, lowering his hands. Sometimes, proving doesn't mean destroying, he said calmly. It means understanding. Chiba didn't respond right away. For a long moment, he just stared at Bruce, as if he was mentally reviewing every detail of what had just happened. Then, slowly, he bowed his head in a gesture of respect. The duel was over before it even began. Nobody applauded. Nobody spoke. But everyone there knew they had witnessed something rare, not a fight, but a lesson. And, somewhere between the mat and the silence, two legends had understood each other without needing words. The weight of silence. The air in the dojo seemed thicker now, as if the space itself had absorbed the tension that was released there. Chiba remained motionless for a few more seconds, his eyes still fixed on Bruce, before slowly turning towards his students. With an almost imperceptible gesture, he dismissed them. One by one, the disciples left, some casting curious glances over their shoulders, others with their heads bowed, as if they had been reprimanded. The wooden door slid open with a soft creak, and the last of them closed it behind them. Now there were only the two of them left. Bruce took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. It wasn't the first time his skill had been put to the test, but rarely did a confrontation end like this, no blood, no screams, just that silent recognition. He knew that Chiba was not a man of empty gestures. The respect he had just shown carried the weight of decades of discipline, of a lifetime dedicated to mastering not just his body, but his mind. Chiba broke the silence first. His voice was low but firm, like the sound of a blade being carefully drawn. You're not like the others. Bruce didn't smile. There was no triumph in his features, just a stillness that came from a long time observing the world through the lens of struggle. Nobody is, he replied. But some choose to see only what they want. Chiba crossed his arms, studying him as if he were a riddle to be deciphered. You speak as if you know what I see. I know what you don't see, Bruce corrected. You look at a man and see an adversary. I look at a man and see a mirror. Chiba let out a dry laugh, almost a cough. Mirrors break. Or they reflect the truth, Bruce replied. Depends on who's looking. For a moment, it looked like Chiba was going to respond with another taunt, but something in his expression changed. Maybe it was tiredness. Maybe it was the realization that, at that moment, there was nothing left to prove. He took a step back, away from the center of the mat, and gestured toward the door. Come. There are things that can only be said outside this place. The Garden of Stones. The dojo's inner courtyard was a meditation space, a rectangle of packed earth surrounded by carefully arranged stones. In the center, a single gnarled tree, its roots exposed like veins, stretched toward the sky. Chiba sat on a rustic wooden bench, next to a small artificial lake where red carp glided lazily among the lotus leaves. Bruce remained standing for a moment, watching the movement of the water. There was something hypnotic about those creatures, the way they moved without haste, as if time didn't exist for them. Have you ever wondered why we fight? Chiba asked suddenly, without looking at him. Bruce didn't respond right away. Instead, he sat on the floor, crossing his legs in seiza, hands resting on his knees. We fight because we were taught that it is necessary, he said, finally. Because someone, at some point, decided that strength was the only language that mattered. But the truth is, most of us don't fight to win. We fight to not be forgotten. Chiba raised an eyebrow. And you? What are you looking for? Same as you, said Bruce, looking him in the eyes. An answer that cannot be given with punches. Chiba let out a sigh, as if he had been waiting for that answer. Many years ago, I believed that perfection lay in the perfect strike. In the movement that couldn't be blocked, in the technique that couldn't be surpassed. But then I realized that true mastery isn't in winning. It's in knowing when not to fight. Bruce nodded slowly. And now? Now? Chiba smiled, a tired but genuine smile. Now I understand that the real enemy is not on the other side of the mat. It is here. He touched his own chest, over his heart. And here. He pointed to his own temple. Bruce didn't say anything. It didn't need to. They both knew that this moment was not about words. It was about what came next. The departure. The next morning, Bruce left the dojo before sunrise. There were no formal farewells, no rituals of honor. Just the sound of his footsteps on the gravel as he walked towards the gate. Chiba watched him from the balcony, wrapped in a light kimono, the early morning wind ruffling his gray hair. He didn't call for Bruce. He didn't try to stop him. He just raised one hand in a discreet gesture, almost a wave. Bruce stopped for a moment, looking back. For a second, the two men stared at each other, and then Bruce bowed his head in respect. There was nothing more to say. When the gate closed behind him, Chiba walked back inside the dojo. The place was empty, as it always was in the early hours of the day. He walked to the center of the mat and assumed the meditation position, eyes closed, breathing slow. And, for the first time in years, he didn't think about techniques, opponents, or victories. He only thought of peace. Bruce's way. The rising sun painted the streets of Tokyo gold as Bruce walked forward, the gravel crunching beneath his boots. He didn't look back. It didn't need to. He knew that Chiba would remain there, motionless as a statue, until the last echo of his footsteps faded away. He had learned everything he could from the old master. Not the techniques, those he already mastered, but the most difficult lesson, the art of knowing when to leave. Chiba would never stop him. I would never beg you to stay. Because a true warrior does not bind himself to chains, even if they are made out of respect. Bruce made his way through the narrow alleys, passing merchants opening their shops and workers starting their shifts. The air smelled of green tea and motor oil, a strangely comforting mix. On a corner, a group of young people practiced kendo in a small makeshift dojo, their screams piercing the morning silence. He stopped for a moment, watching them. One of them, a thin boy no more than 15 years old, missed a swing and fell to his knees in frustration. Bruce almost smiled. He remembered himself at that age, full of anger and lacking patience. Mushin, he muttered to himself, repeating Chiba's teaching. The mind without a mind. The boy got up, shook the dust off his hakama and tried again. This time he got it right. Bruce nodded, satisfied, and continued on his way. His fate was unclear. I didn't have a plan, nor a map. Just the certainty that I needed to move forward. Maybe he would return to the United States, maybe he would wander around Asia, maybe he would find another teacher, another challenge. But for now, he walked. And that was enough. The last student. Chiba remained in meditation until the sun rose completely into the sky. When he opened his eyes, the dojo was lit by a pale light, filtered through the paper curtains. He stood up slowly, his joints protesting, and walked to the wall where his swords were stored. His family's katana, the wakizashi he had used in battle decades ago, and a third, simpler, unadorned one, the one he had given Bruce the day he arrived. He picked it up, feeling the familiar weight of the handle. The blade still shined despite the years. Chiba knew that Bruce hadn't taken her with him. Not because he didn't deserve it, but because he understood what it represented, a burden, a responsibility. And Bruce was already carrying his own ghosts. Arigato, he whispered, as if the young man could still hear him. That afternoon, a new student arrived at the dojo. An outsider, like Bruce, but with different eyes, less fire, more doubt. Chiba watched him for a long moment before nodding. We'll start tomorrow, he said simply. The man bowed deeply. Chiba didn't smile, but something in his chest warmed. The wheel turned. It always rotated. The reunion. Years passed. Bruce traveled to countries he had never imagined visiting. He fought in competitions, trained with masters of obscure styles, even worked as a bodyguard on one occasion when he ran out of money. But he never forgot the Chiba dojo. He never forgot the silence of that morning when he left. One night, in a seedy bar in Bangkok, he overheard a conversation between two men. They talked about a Japanese master who had closed his dojo and disappeared. Some said he had died. Others, that he had retreated to the mountains. Bruce didn't say anything. He just drank his whiskey and went out into the damp street, where the light rain blurred the neon lights. He knew Chiba was alive. I could feel it. The return. When he returned to Tokyo, the city had changed. Taller buildings, more lights, more noise. But the neighborhood where the dojo was located remained almost the same. Almost. The wooden gate was worn, the paint was peeling. Bruce hesitated before pushing him away. The garden was abandoned, the stones on the path were covered in moss. The dojo, however, was intact. The sliding doors were closed, but a faint light shone through the gaps. He approached and heard the sound of slow, rhythmic breathing. Someone was meditating inside. Bruce didn't knock. Didn't call. He just knelt in front of the door and waited. Minutes passed. Then, the door opened. Chiba was older. His hair was mostly white now, and deep lines marked his face. But his eyes, those dark, penetrating eyes, still shone with the same intensity. You took a long time, said the master, without surprise. Bruce bowed to the floor. I lost my way. Chiba didn't smile. He didn't hug him. He just nodded, as if that answer was enough. Come in, he said, stepping aside to let him pass. We have a lot to talk about. The silence between the words. The interior of the dojo smelled of aged wood and sandalwood incense. The walls, once bare, now displayed scrolls with ancient calligraphy, maxims of discipline, warnings about pride, verses about impermanence. Chiba sat in the center of the mat, legs crossed in seiza, hands resting on his knees. Bruce closed the door behind him and knelt in front of his master, keeping his eyes downcast. "You didn't lose your way," said Chiba, breaking the silence. "You avoided him." Bruce didn't respond. "I knew it wasn't a question." "What brought you back?" "A dream," he finally admitted. "I fell into it. And there was no floor." Chiba raised an eyebrow, as thin as a razor. "And what does that mean for you?" "That I'm still falling." The master sighed, a barely audible sound, like wind passing through a crack. "Everyone falls, Bruce. The difference is in how you get up." "I don't know how to do this anymore." Chiba reached out and touched Bruce's shoulder, not gently, but firmly. "So start with the basics. Breathe." Bruce obeyed. He inhaled deeply, feeling the air fill his lungs, the weight of his body against the mat, the tension in his shoulders. Expired. And again. And again. Until the rhythm became an anchor. "Now," said Chiba, "tell me about the man you have become." It wasn't a request. It was an order. Bruce hesitated. The words tangled in his throat like tangled threads. He spoke about the years of competition, the search for a title that never filled the void. About the injuries, the sleepless nights, the anger that consumed him when he lost. About addiction, not to alcohol or drugs, but to something worse, the illusion that victory would make him whole. And, finally, about the moment he realized that he was no longer fighting for himself, but against a ghost that he had created. "I called him the other Bruce," he said, his voice hoarse. "The one who never made a mistake. The one who never felt afraid." Chiba listened in silence. When Bruce finished, the master stood up and walked over to one of the scrolls on the wall. He carefully unrolled it, revealing a single word written in black ink, "MU." "Do you know this kanji?" "Nothing," Bruce replied. "No. It's not nothing. It's a lack of response. It is the emptiness that precedes the question." Chiba pointed to Bruce's chest. "You spent years trying to defeat an enemy that doesn't exist. And now, without him, he doesn't know who he is." Bruce felt the weight of those words like a punch in the stomach. "What do I do?" "You stop." Chiba folded the parchment and placed it aside. "And listen." "Listen to what?" "The silence. Yours. My. The world's." The master approached and held Bruce's face between his hands, forcing him to face him. "You are not the one who won. It's not what you lost. You are what chooses, with each breath, to continue." Bruce closed his eyes. Tears flowed, hot, down her cheeks. "I don't know if I can." "You're already doing it." The return. The days turned into weeks. Bruce woke up before dawn, swept the dojo, prepared tea. "I trained Kihand basic strikes, fundamental stances, as if it were the first time." Chiba didn't correct him. He just watched, sometimes with a nod, sometimes with a grunt of disapproval. One night, after hours of Mikuso meditation, Bruce broke the silence. "Master, why didn't you ever ask me about her?" Chiba didn't need to ask who he was referring to. The woman Bruce had loved and lost, years before. The reason he had left the dojo the first time. "Because it doesn't matter," replied the master, bluntly. "The past is a broken mirror. You can look at the pieces, but you can't rebuild it." "What if I still miss her?" "Then feel." Chiba stood up and extended his hand. "But don't let that stop you from living." Bruce held his master's hand and stood up. For the first time in years, he felt something loosen inside him. It wasn't peace. It wasn't happiness. It was something simpler, the absence of a fight. The last lesson. On the 30th day, Chiba summoned Bruce to the dojo at dawn. The master was standing in the center, holding an ancient bakken, wooden sword. "Today, you are going to attack me," he said. Bruce hesitated. Master, I don't. Attack. Bruce took a deep breath and assumed the posture. He moved slowly, testing the distance, his eyes fixed on Chiba's. Then, he advanced. The blow was clumsy, without force. Chiba dodged it easily and counterattacked, hitting Bruce's side with a sharp crack. Again. Bruce tried again. And another. With each attempt, Chiba knocked him down, without apparent effort. After half an hour, Bruce was panting, his body covered in sweat, his arms shaking. "Why don't you teach me the right technique?" he asked, frustrated. "Because you already know," replied Chiba. "The problem is not the coup. It's fear." "Afraid of what?" "To fail. Of not being good enough." "From me." Chiba pointed to his own chest. "You're still fighting the ghost." Bruce clenched his fists. He felt the anger rising, hot, like old times. And then, as if a dam broke, he screamed and attacked with everything he had. Chiba blocked. And blocked again. And again. Until, in one fluid movement, he disarmed Bruce and pressed the tip of the bakken against his throat. "Enough," said the master, his voice calm. "Now do you understand?" Bruce fell to his knees, exhausted. Not because of the fight, but because of the weight of what he had just realized. "I will never be perfect. No one is." Chiba dropped his sword and knelt before him. "But you can be whole." The goodbye. The next morning, Bruce found Chiba in the garden, watering the plants. The master didn't turn around as he approached. "You're leaving today," he said. It wasn't a question. Bruce nodded. "Yes." "Where to?" "I don't know. But it's no longer about running away." Chiba smiled, for the first time in years. A small, almost imperceptible smile. "Then go. And when you come back, don't wait at the door anymore." Bruce bent over, touching his forehead to the ground. When he got up, Chiba had already returned to the plants, as if the conversation had never happened. He packed his things in silence. As he left, he looked back one last time. The dojo was as it always was, motionless as patient, waiting for the next person who needed to find their way back. Bruce closed the door behind him. And walked.